by way of introduction, Gavin Russell from Accenture, and what I look after is what we call intelligent industry solutions within our space, and I have a particular focus on the Microsoft sector and customer engagement. So for today, I'm really excited actually to be part of this ongoing conversation because we all have a part to play in how we bring these immersive technologies and augmented reality solutions to life. I thought where I'd start, though, just for a second, is to take a step back and put a quote up that I think some of us may be familiar with and some of us may not be. Right, it's Arthur C. Clarke. It's the third of his rules. He was one of those, like Newton, that liked to come up with 3 rules. And his third law was this notion that any significantly advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. And now, what I find really interesting about this particular quote, he penned this in 1973, in the same time when people were using punch cards and mainframes. All right, so how much more applicable is this quote to what we're seeing today? In particular, if we look at some of these, the vendors on display to your left, some of these things we're going to see today truly are a little bit magical. In fact, I was taking a look just Monday night at a bit of the usual YouTube clips, taking a look at what's going on, and I saw one university that are experimenting with drones, and they've got this notion now of taking, in a sense, a drone-enabled selfie machine where you're controlled entirely by gesture. Worth checking out if you get a chance. Basically taking the drone, popping it up, and then this gesture over here takes a picture of you and off it goes. Magic, in a sense, right? So this whole thing about gestures and consumer experience, interestingly, is where we first got involved with the MLA in the second half of last year. So I thought I'd just spend a little bit of a minute talking about an experience that our European team put together as part of a Milan Expo in about 2015, 2016, where our team took a look at consumer engagement, particularly in retail and grocery. Now, again, for those that are involved more on the retail side or even on the supply chain side, at the moment there's more and more awareness and issues, really awareness about in the public of traceability, where food comes from, right? Where it's been, am I eating something from a trusted source, right, is question 1. Question 2 is, for the food that I'm buying, what can I do with it? How can I more interestingly prepare it? What else should I be eating it with, and so forth? And from a retailer perspective, well, how do I use that as a cross-sell opportunity? So our team over in Europe, we'd put together this notion of a gesture-driven visual display, right? So in a sense, if you can picture this, when we go shopping, if I'm interested in a particular item, hovering our hand over that item, and then the screens above there, those highly interactive screens, showing us further information about them. One of the examples we had set up, one of the exhibitions last year, was, let's say I hovered over my favorite steak. Give me a view of, how I could prepare it. Give me a view of what I could be pairing it with. And another view is, give me a view of what it is, where this beef particularly came from. Now, you're probably wondering, I'm at an immersive reality conference. Why is a guy up here speaking about screens and gesture control? And it was really just to introduce this notion that immersive technologies and augmented reality, there's a spectrum to it. So it ranges all the way from the far left, which are really just extending what we see through gesture and through screens, all the way to the more immersive technologies that I hope you'll get a chance to play with today, like Sean mentioned. So some examples up there, if we look on the left, there's a set of glasses, the Vuzix, I don't know if I'm saying that right, to be honest, but Vuzix smart glasses. In the same way, I'm sure most of us have got some kind of a smartwatch that gives us, text notifications and Teams notifications and so on. There's this company that's come up with that idea, but embedded within glasses. So imagine walking around, seeing text messages, directions, displays coming through in a corner of your vision. Terrifying for me, because I think we're distracted enough as it is, to be honest. It'd be quite weird to have a world living like that. But there's companies pushing that quite hard. Now, that's not necessarily immersive, but it's really useful from an information perspective, particularly for directions and so on. And then the range continues. If we take the next step up into more of a mixed reality environment, that's where technologies like the HoloLens and others kick in, where, and I'm sure for those that get a chance to chat to Virtual Method at the back, they've come up with these really interesting solutions where they overlay sort of information over what we're seeing, right? So whether we're looking at devices and we want to understand, whether it's like health manuals or what is this particular thing, the augmented reality is overlaying information. Of course, the next step up is then the fully virtual reality where we step out and get into this other world entirely. So imagine and I always use this example, is the sort of Chinese consumer buying Australian wine in a mall in the middle of Shanghai. How do we get them to experience where that wine came from? And I'm sure a lot of you would get to go through that paddock, I think it's the bus at the back, which gives an experience of what it's like to be on farm. Well, for those that are more involved in the consumer goods market, what if we could give that same experience for your product walk around the farm, speak to the winemaker, see things in action, right? Virtual reality. And of course, to the very far right, where we're starting to push quite heavily at the moment, is not just sight and sound, but what if we could start targeting touch, taste, and feel as well through some other devices, right? So the more haptic devices, and I've got a video towards the end just showing how we're doing that very practically in the sporting arena, and then to olfactory, smell, and to feel as well, right? So there's a range when it comes to these technologies, and we see an interest at all areas along the way. So I just want to spend just 2 minutes of my 15 that I have just talking through 3 things that we've seen when we speak to customers, sort of these attributes when it comes to immersive technologies that people are really, really interested in. Firstly, we see that people want to have immersive experiences, right? So for that whole, let's walk around a farm when I'm not on that farm, or let's understand scenarios like that, being fully engaged in a 3D space in a way that we couldn't be in 2D, right? So, and who knows what she's seen, but she's seen something pretty magical, right? See the effect that it's having, right? So you're essentially taking over the senses. The part that I see more from a business perspective is this whole overlay of being transformative. So being able to take what we see and overlaying additional information over that to transform what we've seen, right? And a really good example of this, and again, one of those things that's well worth YouTubing when you get a chance, is that I've seen even the Cirque du Soleil team are using HoloLens at the moment when preparing their shows. So instead of flying in artists and setting up actual physical devices to check the feasibility of things, they all stand around a stage with a set of HoloLenses on, and they can physically move equipment, apparatus, pull in actors and dancers and so on, and get a sense for the space, right? So transformative experiences are becoming really, really possible for a start and getting uptake in the market. And lastly, empowering, being able to sit somewhere and act on something when we're not there, right? And again, a really good example from the back was being able to see through the eyes of field engineers and to be able to enable and do things as if you're there, right? So I'm not going to drain all of these, but I guess the theme that I want to leave you with is that in industry, we've seen a range of use cases where these types of technologies have been used. Obviously, the companies to the left are some good examples, but up the top here, you'll see a few others. And in particular, IT manufacturing operations is where our team have actually spent quite a bit of time working within the field service space to enable experiences similar to this. Where, as I mentioned, you can overlay information. Let's say I'm a service engineer going out to the field to fix something. This particular example here is someone fixing a car, but we could just as easily imagine that this was a farmer taking a look at cattle, or someone looking over the fields, seeing areas where water's good, water's not good, seeing where I need to do some work in the soil and so forth, having that information right up front as I actually take a look over reality. And of course, the part that also gets exciting, not just for business, but what about for consumers? All right, there's a whole range, on the far right, obviously gaming is a big industry in this space. Marketing is a big industry in this space. And what I'd like to do, just for a few minutes, is show a video clip of a team that we have that really like to bring these sort of experiences to life. So we've got a team called our Liquid Studios team that we partner with a bunch of sporting agencies around Australia. And I want to give you a real quick view of the types of things they've been able to bring to life, which are much better seen through video than me presenting them.
I have a wonderful electronic invention I want you to see. It looks something like this.
Accenture's media and entertainment business, we're applying new technologies such as augmented and virtual reality to sport. And we're seeing it open up brand new business opportunities. It's providing a really unique virtual experience for our fans. We've had people get so into it that they've torn their shirt and pulled muscles. And we had one guy who ran down the pitch to hit a ball and actually smashed the tripod with the camera on it. Very exciting, and the crowd is watching totally get into it as well.
We created an immersive VR experience to transport the user to the iconic Melbourne cricket ground. What happens is that the user gets handed a bat and they get to stand on the pitch and face a couple of balls by the bowler and smack them into the crowd, look around, get blasted by music, and also see the score on the scoreboard. Accenture used their relationship with the Australian Rugby Union to go behind the scenes and film the high-performance teams with a 360-degree camera. Then we took that into virtual reality and allowed the user to see the footage, be part of the plays, dodge the balls, dodge the players, hear the coaches shouting at them, as well as seeing analytical information displayed all around them to understand what was going on in a very true immersive experience.
During the hang time and then making decisions. He can look to the side of him, see what support he's got.
The Sydney Cricket Ground Trust wanted to create an iconic, memorable and Australian first augmented reality event to enhance the fan experience using both HoloLens and iPhone's AR kit. We worked collaboratively with them to identify a concept that would resonate with fans. We then built the animation, the footage and the narrative to actually bring an iconic Australian sporting event to life. The response has been overwhelming. We've had massive Australian media coverage. We've had thousands of people downloading the app and actually experiencing it at the stadium.
In the future, we're going to be including sensory data. So feel the ball, feel the bat, feel the impact of the player hitting you. We're going to be taking the user to different locations. On top of the Empire State Building, playing football or baseball. So with VR and AR, we're taking it in many different directions, but some of the key ones we want to focus on is around pre-game warm-ups, training and coaching, as well as allowing people from different parts of the world to virtually play with each other on the same field.
Going forward, we're looking at replicating more narratives and stories which are highly engaging and creates a unique media platform for sponsors and advertisers. Equally, we're also looking at enriching and enhancing the fan experience on match day to actually overlay real-time data, player statistics, and really bringing that whole experience to life for fans, combining augmented reality with player cards and also fantasy sports.
So I hope that video helped bring to life some of the ideas I was discussing around immersive, haptic, feedback, touch and feel. And of course it goes without saying, as a South African that's seen a cricket example up there, it does hurt me at the moment, but it is what it is. I'll move on from there. You know, let's learn from each other today. Let's use the technologies, let's learn from the other industries, and hopefully together we can start bringing more immersive, transformative and empowering experiences to ourselves and our customers. Thank you very much.